Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, and today I'm going to be showing you the deck that I played at the ECC in Arnhem in the Netherlands, not Holland, this past weekend. It was the biggest tournament in Europe. There were 372 people, and I decided to play Raichu Bats. Now, it was a very mature format. We knew what it was going to look like. We knew what the good decks were. I don't know if this was necessarily the strongest choice, but it's a deck I wanted to play. And I feel like it had decent matchups, and I feel like I've got a good list. So, starting off, we play 4 Pikachu. We don't play that one, we play 4 of this Pikachu. Why do we play this Pikachu? It's got Nuzzle. I did actually take a couple KOs over the course of the tournament with Quick Attack, but you play this one because it's got Nuzzle. You can, in an emergency, try and paralyze your opponent. Now, here's the first controversial part. The deck revolves around Raichu. He is your main attacker. And you don't play any lightning energy, you just use Circle Circuit. 20 times a number of bench Pokemon. 5 bench Pokemon does 100 damage. But we actually play Skyfield, which allows us to have 8 bench Pokemon. So if we've got a full bench with Skyfield, that's 160 damage for a double colourless energy. And that's why we play so many basics. Why do we only play 3 Raichu, you ask? We play a Sacred Ash, which allows us to recover 3 Raichus and 2 other Pokemon. We play a Super Rod, which allows us to recover 3 Pokemon, or 3 Pokemon or basic energy, including Raichu. And we play a 1-1 Milotic line. And the reason we play Milotic is for the ability Sparkling Ripples. You evolve Milotic and you get to take any card out of the discard pile and put it into your hand. Now that could just be a Raichu or a Super Rod or a Sacred Ash. Although we would also use it to recover cards like double colourless energy. Raichu really relies on double colourless energy. So Milotic allows you to get 5 DCEs in a game, and heck, if you play AZ to reuse Milotic, you can actually get more than 5 DCE in a game. It really is quite wonderful. Let's have a look at the other Pokemon. We play 4 Shaymin. Why do we play 4 Shaymin EX? That seems like a lot. The answer is speed. This deck is supposed to be fast, and the deck is supposed to be aggressive. So you play 4 Shaymin EX to allow you to draw as fast as you can through your deck. And it also means you've got more basics to fill up your bench to hit with Raichu. And the brilliant thing about Shaymin is, most of the game, you will have a Skyfield on the bench. So you will put Skyfield down, and the aim in this deck is always to have 5 bench Pokemon, plus up to 3 Shaymins. I.e., as soon as your Pokemon gets rid of Skyfield, you have to discard until you've only got 5 Pokemon on your bench, so you get rid of the Shaymin. And then, of course, you can use Sacred Ash and Super Rod to reuse them. Playing 4 really adds speed to the deck. We also play 3 Baby Yveltal. Now, there's a few reasons for playing him. First of all, he's another basic. We need basics. But there's a couple reasons why him specifically. Number 1, the first attack, Oblivion Wing, allows you to attach a dark energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. I've already told you that Raichu is very reliant on DCE, and Yveltal really helps with that. It helps to make sure that you can, a couple times a game, use Oblivion Wing so that you then can have 2 Dark Energy on a Raichu. You use Oblivion Wing once to put an energy on a Raichu or Pikachu, and then you just need to attach 1 Dark Energy manually. We also play it because Night March is a thing, and he one-hit KOs both the attackers in Night March, Joltik and Pumpkaboo. And there are decks like Seismitoad Giratina where they get rid of all of your energy, or at least they try to, so using Oblivion Wing to recycle your energy really helps. The last card we play is the Crobat line. Now, truth be told, I'd like a thicker Crobat line. I'd really want 4-4-3, but I just don't have room. We play Golbat because when you evolve, you get to drop 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and Crobat, you get to drop 3 damage counters. Although Skill Dive, for 1 energy to do 30 to any Pokemon, not to be slept on. Stick a Muscle Band, that's 100 for 1 energy on a Psychic Weak Pokemon like a Mewtwo EX or Lucario EX, for instance. So not to be slept on, Crobat. Like more, don't have the room. And of course the 1-1 Milotic line, which I've already spoken about. And we'd like more Pokemon, we'd always like more Pokemon, but that gives us enough attackers. And I'll tell you about the Raichu line. I played 9 rounds at the ECC, except for the game where all of my Raichu were prized. I was drawing dead, it didn't matter. Every other game, it was fine. I never wanted for Raichu. Because the thing is, with this deck, you end up being overly reliant on Professor Sycamore. So you end up discarding a bunch of Stage 1's early game and recovering them with Sacred Ash, Super Rod, and Milotic anyway. So it really wasn't a huge issue. In terms of balls, we play 4 Ultra Ball because it can get all of the Pokemon in your deck, including, crucially, Shaymin. And you get to discard 2 cards from your hand, so that you discard 2 cards, grab a Shaymin, and then not only are you drawing cards, using Shaymin's setup ability to draw until you've got 6 cards in hand, but also it allows you to actually draw 2 more cards because you're discarding them. We play 2 Ultra Ball, and this is another card I'd like more of. It gets your Zubat, it gets your Golbat, it gets your Pikachu, it gets your Raichu. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I've only got space for 2. Again, this deck is supposed to be fast, and that adds consistency. 2 Trainer's Mail. I worry about consistency in decks. Again, I'd like to play 4. It's purely a space issue for Trainer's Mail. It helps you get those early Sycamores, those early balls, things of that nature. Now, in terms of the supporter line, we play 4 Sycamore, and this is our main supporter. Now, there is a slight risk that this is too aggressive. We end up using Professor Sycamore every single game, and that is a slight worry. But the thing about Professor Sycamore is, as I keep saying, it's an aggressive deck. You want your bats out, you want your Raichus out. The downside of using Professor Sycamore is that you sometimes have to discard cards you'd rather not discard. That's why we're playing a Sacred Ash, and we're playing a Super Rod, and we're playing a Milotic, and we're playing AZ so you can reuse the Milotic. Evolve, pick it up with Milotic, stick down the Feebas, and then you can re-evolve later in the game. Of course, you can also use Super Rod or Sacred Ash to put the Milotic and Feebas back in the deck and use them again that way. And this really helps to minimize the amount you're throwing away with this deck. Other supporters we've kept as light as possible because supporters, we want to run through this deck and get set up as quickly as we can. What we don't want to do, and there's no Hex Maniac in this deck, and there's no Judge in this deck because we're going for speed and aggressiveness. I think it's the only way to make Raichu Bats viable. We have 1 Teammates. Why do we have 1 Teammates? Because you are getting a Pokemon KO'd pretty much every turn. And when that happens, you can search your deck for any 2 cards, including double colorless energy. And a lot of the time, especially if your opponent has countered Skyfield, you'll just search for a Skyfield, earn a Shaymin, and you'll be straight back off again. If I remember correctly, we've got, I think, 15 basics in this deck. And what that means is that we can afford to essentially fill our bench almost twice over with Skyfield out. So using Sacred Ash, Super Rod, and Teammates, we can usually make sure that even when our opponent gets rid of Skyfield, we've still got enough Pokemon to keep filling our bench. Now, the thing I should have mentioned a minute ago is, the whole point of the Raichu deck is, most EXs have 180. Raichu hits for 160, you then add a Golbat, that's 180. You can add a Crobat, that's 190. We only play 1, but you can add a Muscle Band to get up to 180. Or indeed, you can do things like Raichu for 160, add a Crobat is 180, excuse me, add a Golbat is 180, I always get them the wrong way round, and add a Crobat is 210, allowing you to do things like one-hit KO Mega EXs with 210 HP. We played 2 Lysander because I tried playing it with 1, it's not enough. The thing about this deck is, if you're going that aggressively, what you want to do a lot of the time is pick your opponent's good Pokemon off the bench, KO EXs. And of course, Shaymin EX has 110 HP and a weakness to lightning, which means if you've got free bench Pokemon, you can pick your opponent's Shaymins off the bench. So come late game, maybe you can't get a Skyfield, maybe you can't fill your bench. What you can do is start grabbing Shaymins off the bench. The only other cards we play are a single Floatstone, which I've cut and added back in, and I've had anywhere between 0, 1 and 2. When you go second, you really want to get an Yveltal out, or you want to be using a Sky Return with Shaymin or something along those lines. And Floatstone helps with that. Also, it can be quite nice if your opponent Lysandre's an Evil Tau, or you can sit there using Oblivion Wing and then use Floatstone to retreat. We also play a single Muscle Band, and again, this is another card I would like more than one of, but the reality is I cannot afford the space to run more than one. Running one means we can grab it with teammates, we can recover it with Milotic, and again, it helps Raichu hit the numbers, 180 with a full bench, or you can do things like, Muscle Band and Crobat to hit 210, Muscle Band, Golbat and Crobat to hit 230, and so on. In terms of energy, it's quite simple. We play 4 double colourless energy because it's amazing, and we play 4 dark energy. Why 4? I've done a lot of testing, and this seems to be the best number. 3 and you whiff it too often, 5 and you're really just cutting cards you need more. We play Evil Tau to recover it, and it can sometimes you can struggle to draw the dark energy first of all, but that's a risk you've got to take. We're playing 6 balls, we're playing 2 Trainer's Mail, we're playing 4 Shaman and 4 Sycamore. You should be able to get a dark energy nice and early. And we can play Super Rod to recover it. I played this deck at a couple of tournaments. I went to a city championship and made 3rd place. And along the way, I had to play a couple of Mewtwo's and a couple of Giratinas, which are supposed to be bad matchups. And I played it at the ECC, finishing with a 5-3-1 record, losing 1 game on a stupendous misplay. I used Milotic to grab a Stadium under a Giratina lock, when all I needed to do was grab a basic energy and I had game locked up. That one's on me. And my other 2 losses, I sat there and drew dead 2 games in a row, which doesn't happen with this deck very often. The thing that happens is that you end up discarding stuff you'd rather keep using Sycamore, but it rarely draws dead. You may well end up having to get rid of your Golbats, your Crobats, your Raichus, etc. early game, either with Sycamore or with Ultra Ball to set up, but you rarely end up drawing dead with this deck. It draws very nicely because you've got the 4 Sycamore, the 4 Ultra Ball, the 4 Shaman, the 2 Trainer's Mail, and then you've got AZ to reuse Shaman, you've got teammates. It does tend to run quite nicely. And after a couple of turns, you'll end up playing a lot of cards, and your deck will actually be quite thin, and you'll generally tend to be able to get what you need a lot of the time, especially using VS Seeker, teammates, and Milotic. So let's have a very quick look at matchups then. Night March is really quite easy. It's your best matchup. Evil Tau 1-hit KOs both of their main attackers. Raichu 1-hit KOs them very easily. And then you've got Golbat and Crobat to change the to win the prize trade. They can KO Joltix and Feebasses very quickly indeed. Your opponent can use Hex Maniac to turn off Golbat and Crobat, but then you can just use Lysander to grab their Shaman off the bench. And if they use Lysander to grab your Shaman, then they're not using Hex Maniac, and you can use Golbat and Crobat to get ahead in the prize race. Another very favourable matchup is Evil Tau. Now they can play tricks like Gallade and Zoroark Break, which can be a bit of a pain to KO, but even 140 HP is really not that hard for Raichu to KO. It's 7 bench Pokemon, or 6 and a Muscle Band, or 5 and a Muscle Band and a Crobat, etc, etc. It really comes down to whether you can stream Raichus. If you can get a Raichu out every turn, you will be Evil Tau. They can't use Evil Tau EX, they can't really bench Shaman, and if they do, that gives you easy prizes with Lysander. Seismitoad Giratina is a real pain, and I would recommend, if you're worried about Seismitoad Giratina, drop an Evil Tau EX for a promo Jirachi, so that you can discard your opponent's special energy, and if you time it right, then the most your opponent can do is Lysander a bench Pokemon and hit for 50 with Seismitoad. And as long as you don't have Feebas or Zubat on the bench, that's not going to be enough to get the KO. So Jirachi really will help to swing the Seismitoad Giratina matchup. It's the only matchup it will really help in. In almost any other matchup, you discard an energy and they just Lysander and kill something on the bench. But it really does help against Seismitoad Giratina. You've also got your Raichu, which can run through Seismitoad surprisingly quickly, especially as they can't one-hit KO. And if they go aggressive Giratina, Evil Tau becomes your best friend. You can sit there in Oblivion Wing, try and stop them getting rid of all of your energy by reattaching, and then go ahead and try and use Raichu with basic Dark, so they're not stopping you attaching, well, they are stopping you attaching DCE, but it's not the end of the world. Manectric Bats really is about 50-50, and the matchup comes down to this. Oh, by the way, Cyberstone Giratina is about 50-50. If they hit all of their hammers, you're a little bit screwed. If they don't, you've got a decent chance if you play it correctly. Manectric Bats is very much a case of, can you, because they will often play Parallel City, which limits you to free bench Pokemon, and that's really annoying if you don't get a Skyfield to recounter it. With Manectric, they've got 170 HP. If you can get a quick KO on a Manectric, you'll usually win the game, because their Crobats are not doing very much to your Raichus. It's going to take a muscle-banded Crobat will do 50. They'll then need a Golbat and a Crobat, or 2 Golbats, just to get a KO on a Raichu. It's incredibly difficult, and it usually takes them 2 turns. And then, of course, you can grab their Shaymins off the bench. So as long as you can get, generally, a big KO on a Manectric early, you'll win the game. Now, that's easier said than done, because they generally play a fatter Bats line, and they can do things like Golbat, Golbat, Overrun to KO a Pikachu on turn 1. But if you're knocking out their EXs, you should be able to go ahead in the prize trade. And they can struggle to, if they don't have a 2-energy Manectric, they can struggle to KO Raichus. Yeah, they'll get a couple of early KOs using Golbat and Crobat, but once they've dropped a bunch of Bats down, it can be difficult for them to actually get a KO on the Raichu in 1 turn, because Manectric's hitting 40 with a Muscle Band, Crobat's hitting 50 with a Muscle Band. And that's not enough to KO Raichu. So they'll often get some cheeky prizes, but if you can KO a quick Manectric, you're usually in pretty good shape. I mean, if you don't attach a tool, they've got to use bat damage to KO the Raichu anyway, because otherwise they're only hitting 80 with a Muscle Band. Mega Mewtwo can be a very difficult matchup. You can try it, and I have already uploaded a game of me playing Raichu against Mega Mewtwo, so I'd highly recommend you check that out. If I remember, I shall put a link in the description. They play Damage Change Mewtwo, which is very, very awkward and can be a real pain to play around. And Mewtwo will be taking a prize every turn. You need to set up quickly, you need to poke them so that they can't get a damage change KO, and hope they don't play a Pokemon Center Lady. It's winnable, but it's incredibly difficult. And they're the main decks you should expect to see in the X and Y to breakthrough format. So Night March, very positive, Yveltal, very positive. Seismitoad Giratina, 50-50, maybe slightly above if you play Jirachi. To be honest, probably slightly below if you don't. Manectric Bats is about 50-50, it's just whether you can get a quick KO on a Manectric. And Mega Mewtwo is really not a very good matchup at all. Is the deck worth playing? Oh yes, it's worth playing. Now when Breakpoint comes out, it's going to change things around, but the reality of this deck is, it's fast and it's hard hitting, and I have played a lot of this deck, and I believe this is the optimal list. There's a whole bunch of things you could change, but honestly, the only thing I would do at this stage is cut an Yveltal for a Jirachi. I really don't think any other changes are particularly prudent. Yes, I know, and I'm sure this is going to be the comment I get most often, I know it looks like I should play a 4th Raichu. I know that, ladies and gentlemen. I think that myself. I look at the list now and it looks like I should be playing a 4th Raichu. But between the 4 Ultra Balls, 2 Level Balls, your team makes your Sacred Ash, your Super Rod and your Milotic, you really don't struggle to get the Raichus out. It looks like you will, you don't need that 4th Raichu. And as I've said, I have played 2 tournaments with this, and I've done pretty gosh darn well in both of them. And if it wasn't for some uncharacteristic dead draws and a terrible misplay on my part, for which I should add I have nobody to blame but myself, I feel like I could have done a lot better at the ECC, and I still finished a pretty respectable kind of 85th out of 372, which I don't think is too bad at all. Keep posted to this channel, ladies and gentlemen. There will be more videos coming up lately. I'm starting to test breakthrough decks, and I'm going to share the results of them with you. I am hoping to record more tournament games soon, and there's going to be all kinds of other stuff going up, like for instance a video all about Greninja. It's gonna be fun. As always, make sure you like this video, make sure you comment, and if you haven't subscribed, why haven't you subscribed? I thought we were friends. And like it, come on. Let's be friends, like the video. Go on. Go on. Go on. If you liked it yet, good. Thank you very much for watching. Look after yourselves till next time. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.